Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. Our guest today is Alagappan. Alagappan Veerappan is a consulting director at Cognizant and he manages AI and analytics practices for retail and consumer goods clients. Alagappan, thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Hi, Krish. Nice to have me here.
I'm excited because we had a quick chat before the recording. We learned a little bit about each other, and much like almost all of our guests, we don't know each other yet. This is just the starting of our journey, in discovering each other as people and the topics we're going to cover. Topic we're going to cover here as well. So the topic we've kind of loosely picked for today. You know what? My apologies. Before I go into the topic, if you could just introduce yourself. I know I gave a brief intro, but if you could introduce yourself to our audience, Alagappan, that would be really cool.
Thanks, Krish. I think my background is on professional services industry. Like pretty much my job for the last 27 years is to work for clients, serve for clients, consulting for clients in terms of problem solving for them. So primarily, I started in IT during the mainframe days in 1998. Later on, I did multiple things for my clients, but primarily doing projects for clients and doing consulting for them. I specialize mostly on scoping and planning and consulting in terms of the initial work that we do and how do we convert that into technology projects. Very lately, I pivoted to artificial intelligence and analytics, and that's where I want to share some of my experience today, Chris.
Perfect. That's a great introduction. So that I have a couple of things to ask you there, but just to share it with folks, the topic we've picked for today is how to pivot your career to an AI-enabled role. So that's a topic that Alagappan has suggested. It's interesting, so I've not made any changes to the title. So we'll just start there, roll, and see where that takes us. But before we get into the topic, right? Uh, you mentioned that you're in the business of providing consulting services, which actually is very interesting because I used to be a consultant. I say used to be. I do some form of consulting every now and then, but most of my career has been in the business of building products. Right, 95% of my career essentially. Now you're the other. If I say, if you take software and split that very broadly and loosely into two pieces, into two segments, I would say we would. Hope you agree, but I would say it's okay to say that one part of it is products and the other part could be services. There's more to it, surely.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who's not got as much, not even close to the experience that you have in the space of consulting and providing, trying to find out what a client needs and serving the needs of the client, as you beautifully put it, I have a number of questions there, right? Because as a product company, you tend to do things a little bit differently than a consulting organization. So I want to learn a bit more about that as well. But before we go there, right? Before we go there, the topic again: how to pivot your career to an AI-enabled role. So, just before we get started, what do we mean by that, Alagappan? What does that mean?
Yeah, in the from what do you call, if you look at from a 2022 standpoint, no, like 2022 November, you got the Chat GPT 3.0 version came in. From then on, I see a lot of transformation happening in the technology world, and I think this is going to be one of the innovative transformations that we'll see in our lifetime in terms of how AI is going to transform what we do, both professionally and personally. So in that context, what I'm saying is no. I think there is a need for everyone to adopt AI. In how is up to each one of us to determine. But still, either AI is going to change your job, or some of the jobs will be lost, or some of the jobs will be transformed. And another thing is it's called augmented workforce, wherein we all should learn to work with the AI. I think I recently seen one of the companies doing a headcount planning. They're talking about how many AI agents they need to build, how many humans they need to kind of forecast. So that's what
Wow.
the kind of already people are doing it, and all of us should learn how to work with an AI. Be a chat that you do with your bank customer service or anything, but we all have to learn to adopt AI and work with AI. I think that's what it's important. So we all need to be prepared from a mindset standpoint how you have to work along with AI and use AI for your own productivity and manage AI. That's what I think from what I meant from a pivoting for the AI world,
No,
Krish.
I think you said some really interesting things there, right? And the thing is, I try to I've tried to take notes as people talk, but the thing is, when I try to take notes, I sometimes lose the essence of what is being told. So I try to balance it to the extent possible. So my apologies if I misquote something, please correct me. But I think that there's a number of things you said there that are of interest to me. First thing you said, when people are trying to staff a team, you've already seen the transition happen from you need 6 resources. 2, you need 3 human resources like Homo sapiens, and you need 3 AI agents, right? So I have a few things to ask you there. But before I go there, just to set the context and the foundation, if you will, as a person, I ask this question to a lot of people these days. Where do you stand as if I were to say Alagappan as an engineer, right, as a consulting director, what what is his take on where the future of technology is in the context of AI? In other words, let me make the question a bit more specific. What I'm saying there is, your first reaction when you hear or read about these items and these topics that relate to AI, is that fear, anxiety, excitement, or indifference? What is your initial reaction to topics that fall in this space?
For me, it's excitement from an opportunity standpoint, because end of the day, if your mindset is this threatened, you cannot actually work on it. It's there for sure. There is no doubt in it. AI is there for sure, but it will take some time to mature. But I think I am personally excited about the opportunities that AI will bring in. But it's about how all of us should adopt is what my thinking is all about, Krish.
Which is very much like mine. I was hoping it'll be different so I can ask you a different question. Now I have to change my question, which I completely agree, right? In other words, it's less about being in denial. It's more accepting the fact that, hey, you know what? There are different ways I could be building software, right? We're going to have to constantly evolve. We have done that as an industry over the years, but this is an inflection point, if you will. Things, I mean, I always tell people, if you're writing JavaScript code, even over the years, every morning you wake up, you're not sure which library you should be using. I'll be like, oh my God, should I be doing something else this week? Because things change frequently enough. But the pace at which AI technologies are changing puts something like JavaScript changes to shame, because the pace is
Yeah.
not even comparable, right? It's at a different pace altogether. So back to my question that you had pointed, which you said you're trying to figure out how to staff a team as to how many humans I need, how many AI agents might I need, as loosely speaking. Let's take that and have a chat about it, right? So you are, you're a consulting director, and I'm going to make some assumptions, and please correct me as I go because I don't know the business enough. A client has a problem, right? A large client has a problem. They need solutions. You're like, hey, you know what, Alagappan, how can you provide the solution to me? A technology solution. Now, depending on the size of the project, you probably have to do n number of things. Can you call out for some of those things that you have to do, ignoring AI for a moment, right? We'll bring AI just shortly, but outside of AI, if you had to go explore a project or solve a problem for a particular client, and you don't have to go into specifics, I'm just saying at a high level, how do you approach the problem agnostic to AI?
Yeah, I think again, end of the day, no, we always think from a technology standpoint, no, or a process standpoint. For example, a client comes to us with a problem statement. Sometimes the client knows what to do. Sometimes the client don't know what to do. They said, "Hey, I have a problem that I want you guys to help me solve." And technology is agnostic there. Sometimes they may have a technology that they need to use, but still we'll normally approach this from a technology agnostic approach in terms of, hey, whatever technology it is, how do we solve this problem for a client? Just to take an example, no? For example, a manufacturing client is coming and telling me, I have a lot of inventory, one problem statement, and second is I have a service level problem that I take 45 days to deliver my product. So obviously there is an inventory issue here. So we normally look at the problem from a process standpoint, what process improvements that the client has to make, and what are the technology solutions that we can able to bring in to solve a problem. So technology is always there in the game, technology and process. But now in the technology space, we'll think from an AI standpoint what we can able to do it, because AI is not only doing what a human will do, AI is also doing things that human cannot do. No, it's another good example. No, for example, a retailer is having a master data management as a catalog. Let's say there are millions of products, or let's say 10,000 products. It's manually impossible for someone to enrich that in a short period of time. But you can have an AI solution to kind of enrich in a quicker period of time. So AI is there to things that what human cannot do possibly in a in the context of quality and time as well, Krish. So AI is opening up those opportunities also, which earlier it was not possible,
Okay.
Krish.
More interesting points. I wish I could jot this down while you say it because I have a lot of questions there, right? So you said you a client has a problem. They're like, hey, we need to solve this problem, and maybe they have an idea as to how to go about solving the problem. Or other times they might say, you know what, I honestly don't know or don't care. This is the problem, and I need a solution. I might have an idea about what that solution possibly is, but it's up to you as a consulting organization to take me from the problem to the solution, right? I have a certain budget, time frame, yada yada yada, but that's kind of what it is. They came to you with that problem, and you started solving the problem. Now let's keep that in mind. Let's keep that in mind. Uh, I should draw some of this because I forget as I explain it, but let's say we try to keep that in mind. Now that you're trying to solve that problem because they gave you the problem already, right? Your approach is to find the best solution, the most optimal, efficient, reasonable, affordable solution to that problem. You would have in the pre Gen AI world, you would have solved the problem a certain way. And in the current world, you're probably solving the problem a certain other way. I have a second part of this question, but just so that I don't forget the first part, I want to ask you this. Even taking a simple example, how are you doing? How do you see yourself doing things differently now compared to before? Right, the same problem. Let's say Krish is a company, comes to Alagappan with a problem. I came to you 2 years before. Now I'm, as a parallel example, I'm coming to you now. The problem hasn't changed. The client hasn't changed. The service provider hasn't changed. But the world and the technology has changed. So is there a way you can sort of help us understand a facet of a problem that you would have solved a certain way prior to the AI days and in the current day and age?
So that again in our most of our engagements, what we take is AI first approach. No, we normally say how AI can able to help some of the things. No, AI is again still in the gamut of things. It's under the digital transformation. No, again last 10 years we are talking about digital transformation as a word, but pretty much it's a technology that we all use. AI is now for now being like another toolkit on your side of it now. But now we always take a AI first approach wherein you say how AI can able to help solve this problem better. Not that other things are not possible, but now AI is kind of overarching everything else that we are doing, Krish. Now, if you look at it, now AI is kind of front-ending a lot of the problem solving now from a technology standpoint. So the other technology becomes a subset for the AI wrapper, I would say, lack of a better word,
So
Krish.
that's interesting, right? I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. So I came to you with a problem, but let's say before I go to my question, second part of the question, is there a small example that you can think of more specifically, which is like, hey, prior to the days where we had these things available to us, this is how we solved this problem. But now that we have these AI agents and whatnot available to us, we are doing it differently. Is there like a simple small example that we can
Yeah,
think
I
of
can
here?
I can share one recent example. No, for example, earlier, let's say there is a customer service. No, we were doing a customer service or a what do you call a contact center operations for a client, Krish. You know, again, always from a contact center standpoint, the parameters are same. No, we wanted to have the number of calls to be reduced at the same time customer service to be done at the right time. No, whatever the typical customer service metrics is always there. And obviously, the cost is also an element, no, in terms of productivity improvement was always there. No, productivity improvement is always there. And before this Gen AI world, we always look at it, hey, how can I make the experience better for the customer? How I can make the call seamless? So it's more on the technology side. How do I make everything better for the client? But of course, productivity is there's only so much only you can do from a productivity standpoint because you need to have a human agent working for Monday to Friday, whatever the time it is. And like I said, no, there are some of the problems are not being addressed at all because I don't have the budget to have a 7-day workforce to handle my customer calls. That was the situation, but that is what it is. And on the weekend, we used to have a what do you call a very traditional touchstone type of facility wherein still some customers can still get some service, but still not the service that you can get through a contact center. That is the situation one. Now with the AI, we are talking about AI. If you have an AI is there, so obviously the AI can augment a particular agent, no? Like a contact center agent, his productivity can be improved by having an AI assistant for them. We call agent assist. And then also on the weekends, we can have voice calls coming in, no? Wherein You can have a 24 by 7 contact center open and still have the same better customer experience. And the quality of calls is also improving because typically an agent will take more time to analyze. And then even if you're on a phone call with a bank or an airline, it will take 10 minutes or 15 minutes for you to finish a call. Now with the AI assisted agent, he can able to finish the call much faster with the quality of response much better. So obviously AI has transformed a lot of these things that what you would have not even thought about solving prior to the AI world, Krish. I hope that
I think
explains a
no, no.
little
I
bit.
think that's a great example, right? It's a great
Yeah,
example. Thank you for that. So let me go to my second part of my question. So you said when somebody comes to you with a problem today, you're going to be like you have you said an AI first approach.
yeah,
Over the years we've had like a web first approach or a mobile first approach, or as an API company we say we are an API first, right? We first build everything as APIs and then we start building the clients to consume those APIs. Now you use the word or the term AI first. Now here's my question. I came to you with a problem. uh, I'm going to take they say, right, when you have a hammer everything looks like a nail, right? I,
yeah,
I don't really quote these idioms very well, but something along those lines.
yeah.
Here is my question in that context. I came to you with a problem. You are like, you know what, I'm going to find the best AI way of solving this problem. I'm going to find which AI tools and technologies to potentially use. Again, playing the devil's advocate, is it possible that before somebody understood the problem, went got a good fundamental understanding of the problem domain, you're now trying to start bringing technologies into the mix? Like, in other words, like, it's almost like, you're like, hey, I need to be using these AI tools and agents and agentic AI and all of this. I sometimes, can I lose sight of the core problem and end up using technologies, whether it's AI or outside of that, not necessarily needing it because now I'm in the mode of actually wanting to use it?
I think it's an interesting question, Krishna. If you look at it, no, we are typical technology agnostic because we are not a platform company. Like at least in my current role, we are not a platform company. We do any technology for a client. That's what we are, technology agnostic. So when I said AI first approach, still the problem remains to be solved. What is the problem? What are the different solution options always there? From a solutioning standpoint, I said AI first approach, wherein what AI can solve, because the potential is much more in the current world. But of course, to be quite frank with you, there are some clients who wants to somehow use Gen AI for their own way of doing it, no, because they want to show the shiny object. That is always there. Because sometimes the client comes and tell me, I want to do a Gen AI POC. That's what sometimes they ask for, but that's a like outlier, I would say. But still, when I said AI first approach, it's more about from a solutioning standpoint, I want to just see what AI can do because that has kind of got a lot of potential. And of course, everything else is subset there. No, it is not that when you do AI, we are not ignoring other things. AI is going to augment whatever you are going to do it. It's not kind of a replacement across AI across non-AI. It's not like that. It's more
Okay.
about how AI augment your technology solution is the way we look at it, Krish.
Okay, makes sense. Now, let's
Yeah,
say we take a problem, and again, since we're imagining a problem, sometimes a little bit difficult, but I'm going to do what I can here, right? So, let's say we have a problem, and there's many phases to solving that, right?
yeah,
Maybe steps 1 through step 10. Now, you've there's two different ways I want to ask this a similar question, which is, I, as a client, come to you with a problem that you've kind of solved in the past. In other
yeah,
words, you've not done it for me as a company, or
yeah,
you may not have done it as a provider yourself in your team, but some other team has done it. But in
yeah,
a long story short, it's not a unique problem. It's a problem you've solved in the past, and I come to you with a problem. Let's keep that as problem as one problem number one. Problem number two is, I come to you with a problem that you may or may not have actually solved in the past. It's something
yeah.
new, right? Entirely new. Now, the way you approach the solving of these two problems, with or without AI, it's going to be fairly different, right? I mean, I would say seismically different. Now, if I came to you with a problem that you've solved in the past, Alagappan, do you look for, hey, the a chain is only as strong as the weakest link, as I say, right? So do you go with your past experience in your previous projects that are similar to this and say, you know what, out of the 10 things we did to solving a similar problem a year ago, 8 of them went wonderfully well. The other 2, not so much, could have been better. So, do you start with finding AI augmented solutions for those 2 problems, right? For those 2 steps, sorry. Or do you look at it more holistically, saying, you know what, even though I did the other 8 steps quite well, I had no issues over the years, I will still look at it with a fresh pair of eyes and see how AI can help me not solve just those two steps that we struggle to some extent, but all of those steps. I mean, does that make sense, my
Yes,
question?
makes sense. I think, like you said, no, most likely we would like to do it a holistic perspective now, because the potential is much more on AI. But one thing that I want to also call out, no, we don't want to use LLM for the sake of using LLM, no, because another it's also a cost involved in it. And we ourselves, in one of the projects, we started a complete LLM approach, and then later on we said it's a hybrid, wherein where we have to call LLM, we have to take a call. So we don't, like you said very clearly, no, we don't want to just use AI for the sake of it, but we want to look at from an augmentation standpoint how this is going to give more benefit is the way we are looking at it, Krish. I think that's the approach we are following for everything that we're
Okay, so
doing
which
now. Yeah.
means in my example, you would not say, you know what, those two steps created more problems. So let me focus on those from an AI standpoint is not what you're saying you're going with, right? You're saying, you know
Yeah.
what, let me look at the problem holistically, essentially.
Correct, correct. That's what we're kind of following now, because with the advent of things, but at the same time, we don't want to just give LLM as a solution for everything. That's what we are not
Okay,
doing it as.
and do you ever find yourself in a scenario or a situation where you're like, you know what, I can solve this problem without a lot of AI in the mix, but I actually have to use AI, not because I need to, but because, like you mentioned earlier, the client wants to, right? Everybody's changing that domain from whatever it was to .ai, and as you dig deeper, you find out sometimes a lot of these companies are actually just calling out OpenAI APIs, right? I mean, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. To me, would I call Snowpal an AI company if all we did was simply leverage someone else's AI API? Or probably not, because the way you're integrating them is simply calling their interfaces, so to
Yeah,
speak, right? So
correct.
that doesn't necessarily mean that, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Do you see a situation where you're obligated to using more AI than necessary because people want to see more of it?
And to be quite honest with you, on a POC level, we do sometimes a shiny object thing, but when it comes to production, we do take a conscious call. But most of the time, the cost becomes a very important aspect, and then also the governance angle, no, because some of the clients are very critical about when to use the LLM calls, no, because not only for cost, it also from a governance and the AI ethics standpoint. So we are very cautious in terms of when to use LLM, not just for the sake of it, but for POC, I've seen situations wherein we just use for the sake of it, Krish.
Okay, and then you mentioned POC there, right? Let's say prior to the days of AI being available, at least as freely as it is today, uh, have you seen the time a POC takes change dramatically? Like solving a problem, creating a proof of concept 2 years ago versus today. What would you say is the
It's
difference?
changed a lot actually. We ourselves we've got a tool in Cognizant wherein we use like within 1 hour we can able to give a demo. That's what we kind of come to it. I think that's a kind of a power, but still it's a demo. It is not synthetic data. We can able to show a demo in 1 hour. It is not even possible like at all earlier on. No, so I think that with the AI, the power of doing some of the things has shrunk a lot, Krish. That much for sure. There's no doubt in it. And I've read an article recently. There is one person has published a book in 60 minutes, right from ideation to publishing. It just took only 60 minutes to publish everything. And I don't know the quality of the output, but still, it was not even possible like 2 years before, honestly speaking, Krish, no, because
It
we
was not
just
right.
used
Like I saw an article. No, it's important because I saw Reed Hoffman, right? He mentioned. I think I saw a post a couple of days back where he said I need a cloned version of LinkedIn, and I think without having to do anything in a matter of minutes, it created this new website that pretty much mimicked LinkedIn. Now
yeah.
here is my question one more time, right? And again, I belong to the school of thought where technology is changing and it should change because to be honest, if this happened 20 years, 25 years down the road, I would have been retired and just been watching it from the sidelines, right? So I'm personally, but at a professional level, I couldn't be more excited, right? As somebody who's not just as somebody who's running a startup, but even as somebody who just enjoys engineering, that hey, you know what, this is great. We are able to enjoy this in our lifetimes, and during the middle of our careers. But the thing is, here's my other side of what I want to ask and find out. AI depends on data for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's large language models, small language models, it does not
Data.
matter. It creates it. I'm going to give a layman's interpretation of it. There is a lot of data out there. I mean, a lot of data out there. It is able to create meaningful representations of that data. It's able to come up with analysis in really, really quick time and suggest recommendations and create, whether it's content, as you mentioned, or generate some code, right? But the premise is all of it is driven by an existing set of design patterns and methodologies. Now, I don't know what it means from a creativity standpoint. I'm not saying AI is not creative today. I'm not saying it's not going to become more creative tomorrow. But I'm just trying to understand. I'll tell you, right? Last night I was trying to trying to fix a bug. It took a bit of time. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and as somebody as a tired engineer is at 2 in the morning, I would have loved to have an AI assistant or an AI agent or agentic AI, whatever the right term is, that would have solved that problem for me. Right now, I have two ways to go about this. One is I sit there, stop thinking, right? I don't use the intellect that I was blessed with, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, that's a different conversation. But whatever it is, I could say, you know what, Krish, don't even think. Let me go find a lot of these tools that are going to help solve this problem for me. I can, without going to the specifics of that particular bug, Alagappan, I can promise you, you're just going to have to take my word for it here. I don't think there was a tool that would have given me the problem, right? So there was an example where, we were trying to run one of the apps on an Android device on a simulator and it crashed, and you're trying to figure out why it crashed. Now, I need a human. I need myself or somebody else in my team to have a conversation and go about it. I still am trying to figure out, as a developer, as an engineer, how could I be doing this differently than I did it yesterday or did it 6 months earlier or 2 years ago? Sometimes, I catch myself staring at the wall thinking, I have to ask this question to somebody. Maybe it's to ChatGPT, maybe it's to Gemini, maybe it's to Copilot. But Krish, please don't waste your time thinking about the problem because someone else can solve it better. And then 30 minutes later, it turns out there isn't anybody as of the moment, right? So, well, you know what? I go back to my age old ways of thinking about solving the problem. I have a long winded question that didn't even sound like a question, it was more like a comment, but I'm coming to the question. Here is what I'm asking from a developer standpoint, right? Or as a consulting director, whatever the role you're playing is. Do you sometimes look for solutions from a lot of these tools that are out there, and then you figure after like 20 minutes of looking at it or 30 minutes, you're like, you know what? I could have done it faster if I had not spent time looking for that answer because I was able to think about this using my own intellect and come up with a solution. But now I've kind of stopped thinking. I've tried to delegate all of my thinking to these tools out there because I'm supposed to be using tools, but the tool does not necessarily solve my problem.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting analogy I can give you, Krish, no? Because end of the day, we cannot, I'm just saying, for lack of a better word, no, we cannot expect we cannot expect to outsource our thinking to AI. We always should think AI as an assistant or an enabler, So that's what we call like prompt engineering. You would have seen it, no? Like you should have an intelligent way of prompting and then trying to get AI as a way to help you in your problem solving. Not that AI would have solved the problem because they may not know the context and the critical thinking that you may have it. No, so I think just to give an example, no, like 1 month before, my son was trying to fix an IKEA furniture and he couldn't able to do something. And honestly, that's the first time I tried it. I used my Google Gemini and then took a image of that furniture and then I posted. It actually gave me some amount of ideas. So that ideas helped me to solve that problem. It's not that Gemini has not solved the problem, but still Gemini has given me like a more like a friend who knows or who are an expert who can kind of give it. So I look at AI as a more like a guide or an enabler, not like a thinker to replace the human is the way I look at it, Chris. I don't know whether that answers the question,
No,
but
it,
yeah,
it does answer my
yeah,
question, but I'm going to
yeah,
dig deeper. Right? I'm going to dig a
yeah,
little bit deeper.
yeah.
Now, let's say, right? Uh, let me take a simple example of a calculator.
Hmm.
Now, the calculator has been around forever. It's available in all different forms and shapes. So I don't know if it's a perfect analogy. And again, I completely agree that we have to be building software differently, right? So there's no question. I'm not disagreeing there.
Yeah.
But my discovery and my journey personally has been to figure out in the last 6 months to a year as to how to go about doing that in the most efficient way possible. Because I've done it a
Hmm.
few different ways and I've not been convinced, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes, in life, we have to be appeasing ourselves, the client, the boss, the client, and everybody else comes next, right? Because they're all dispensable, right?
Correct.
But
Correct.
we are indispensable to ourselves. We are not happy doing it. There's no point doing it, right? It
Correct.
might
Correct.
sound philosophical. My apologies, but I'm just trying to make a point there to come to my question. I don't want
Mm.
people to go away thinking, you know what, I'm saying it can or cannot solve the problem. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this because there's a lot of high level thought process around it, but I want to see what it actually means. So back to my question there.
Mm.
So there is a calculator. Now, if I want to find out what is 2.6, let's say you're doing trading, right? One of the things we do in the company, let's say we're doing stock trading. I want to figure out, okay, the last 3 days has been, 5 days has been, there's no dearth of excitement out there in the market, right? So
Yeah.
things are changing every 3 seconds. Now, something was like, I don't know, say Nvidia was $109 at 11 o'clock in the morning or something. It changed to $109.40. What is 40 cents on $109, right? In terms of percentages. Now,
Yeah.
again, if you're using a tracker or E-Trade, it might tell you, but ignoring that for a second, you do the mental math because I see during the day, I find myself doing a lot of this math despite a calculator being there. Now, I told myself, you know what, Krish? Oh, why are you wasting time calculating? You got to use the tool because the tool is there. So I said, you know what? Let me try to use the calculator.
Mm.
I promise you, I missed a lot of trades. Things change a whole lot faster than me plugging in 6 numbers and digits into the calculator and pressing enter
Correct.
because I didn't
Correct.
care for the third decimal. I only cared for the first and maybe the second decimal, but not even the second decimal, right?
Mm.
The tool is there. There's all kinds of beautiful calculators, but it did not necessarily solve the problem for me because I felt like it made me less efficient. Now
Mm.
I'm going to take that preposterous example. Now, if I take that engineering, and as I talk to more people who are entering the workforce, you can depend on technologies and tools that are out there. Now, I about a month ago, we took a piece of code that we wrote and we ran it through 4 different tools, right? Chat GPT,
Mm.
DeepSeek, right? I forget the name, the one from China, right?
DeepSeek.
It's
Yeah.
DeepSeek, right?
DeepSeek is the one. Yeah.
DeepSeek,
Yeah.
Gemini, and Copilot. I took the
Copilot. Okay.
exact same piece of code, ran it through 4 of them, and said, review the code and suggest improvements. So I have a 1 hour podcast on that. It was very interesting. I expected a certain set of things. I did see those things delivered, but the end result on outcome Alagappan was very different. Well, I was very
Yeah.
surprised. Some of the tools felt so short. I was like, oh my God. So if I were getting out of college today or high school or whatever it is, and I relied only on these tools, and I figured, you know what, why should I ask Alagappan? Why should I ask Krish? Why should I ask Tom or George or Jeff? Doesn't matter. The tool does it for me. I'm not convinced you're going to come out a better developer necessarily. Now, I'm not saying humans are better than machines. I'm not saying machines are better than humans. Machines can be better because they can do things which we cannot do and in much faster pace. But I feel like there is an inherent risk there, right? Because you are going to stop short of thinking to the extent that you can otherwise think because you're not, at least I tell me what you think. I find myself in that position. I always am wondering whether should I be writing these 10 lines of code or should I be writing 2 lines of code and have the tool write the other 8 lines of code? Where should I stop and where should the machine start doing it for me?
Yeah, I think this is just my perspective, Krish. No, right now you cannot. It is like a work in progress tool. No, you cannot make a judgment on the current situation of your the 4 tools that you kind of compared. The same thing you do it after 2 years, you'll have a different results, Krish, for sure. Because
But
of
I got to solve the problem today, though, right? You know what
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
correct. So today I think you should only think from a hey, this is still a work in progress. We cannot rely completely. And end of the day, you cannot just in your current context. No, you cannot rely on AI completely. You need to have your own judgment. And I don't know whether you know about this vibe coding concept, Krish. Vibe coding, wherein you actually talk in natural language, and then the LLM will do the coding for you. I don't know whether
Coding.
you are.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I think things are coming up. It's matured. So my point is, this currently it's a very much in the early stages. I would say in another 1 year you'll have better maturity. But as of today, you cannot rely on this tool completely. I completely agree. You cannot rely on this tool completely. You need to have your own way to validate it because end of the day, all AI tools we need a human to validate the output. You cannot just simply blindly follow what is being what is
Right, because you remember exactly right. Because you remember you said prompt engineering, and I talked to a lot of people these days. It's become a skill of its own, prompt
yes.
engineering. Now, if I did that, if I became an extremely good prompt engineer 2 years down the road, I mean, personally, I'm not even sure. Right, the fundamentals of computing have not changed for many years. Right, the frameworks, the tools, the technologies, and the people have changed, But if you go back 30 years and pick up a C book on programming, like Cunningham and Ritchie, right? The fundamentals of what you've learned in that book still stand pretty good, solid,
Yeah,
right? Agnostic to which language you're working in. So
yeah,
I guess the point is, it's to each of us to figure out where we can afford to stop thinking and have the machine do the rest of the thinking. And then the important thing to note there is, the less you have to think, the more you let the machine think. On one side, the more value it can potentially bring to the table from a machine standpoint. Now, the next question I want to ask you is, two people, Alagappan and Krish, have the same set of tools available to them, right? They happen to live in the same beautiful country in America. They have the same set of tools available to them. How do we differentiate ourselves? Because competition is not going to go anywhere, right? The world's population is 8 billion today. It's going to be like 11 billion or something before the end of the century. There are going to be a lot more people, and there's going to be a lot less things to do, as it turns out.
yeah.
So I don't know what we're heading into. How do we differentiate ourselves as people from a skill set standpoint when it comes to engineering and building software?
Yeah, I think this again one point that whatever you said, no, I just one thing I don't want to add to it. No, I'm not still thinking that we will ask the machine to think. In my perspective, we have to think, and machines has to do things. Like more like an execution. No, we should think. You as a project manager, and then machine as a team member for you, who will kind of use your instructions to work upon it. No, I think
No, but
I'm
Alagman,
not.
that was before the advent of AI, right? When you're telling a machine, like if I'm a lathe operator or if I have a factory, like back in India, one of my uncles had a factory and I've gone there. You feed a set of instructions into a machine and it repeats that, right? It's automation, and we've seen that over these years. But AI automation is very different from traditional form of hardware firmware related automation. The beauty of AI, as we've all been attracted to it, is it is promising to do the thinking. It is promising and it's delivering to do the thinking. I don't know how many years optimizes how far away it is. One has to believe, we have to believe Musk's timelines. It could be coming in 2 months. But if you go with what he said over the years, it could take 3 years. I don't know. But I'm just saying it's a lot smarter, right? It's able to do the thinking. So that is why I had the question, which is, I feel like it is able to do the thinking. I feel like it is more equipped to do the thinking because, like you said earlier, if you ask me a question, it's going to take me time to process, digest, understand it, and spit out an answer. When I plugged in the piece of code into ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, within 200 milliseconds, I was able to analyze the code. Now, whether it did a great job or not is a different discussion altogether, but it was able to do the analysis, which means a lot of time is clearly being saved there. You don't need a mid-level engineer to review your code. That is able to do the code, right? So it is able to do a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
That is where I'm getting confused as to, hey, now that it is able to do the thinking, it's different from a traditional form of hardware and machines you've seen in the past. How much should I think? How much should the machine think, and where should I draw that line?
Uh, I think it's an interesting question. So I couldn't able to differentiate on the thinking side of it, but still, I am I am envisioning a situation or a world wherein we all need to augment each other. When I say augment each other, again, like you said, the prompting. No, again, there are some skills that are becoming more important because the AI cannot do that. No, be it be critical thinking or be it be domain skills, whatever. No, some of the things that AI cannot do it. No, I think we need to figure it out in our each of our own industry. What is that AI cannot replace? What is that AI can augment? And what is that AI can replace? That kind of a thinking we should have. And then whatever AI cannot replace, that's where we need to focus on. No, I think we need to ask our kids to focus on. For example, the thinking skills and then the empathy and some of the things aspect. Obviously, AI cannot do it. No, like the some of the prompting also. No, you cannot have a AI to do prompting for another prompting. No, it's like basically you cannot build a AI to operate in AI. You need to have a human to manage what do you call the AI machines here. So I'm still thinking there will be a world wherein we need to understand how these three things has to be figured out, and we need to augment it. But from a workforce standpoint, I also don't know. I always think about it. I don't have an answer to it in terms of whether we need this much of workforce for the tomorrow's world, how the tomorrow's world will be in terms of number of people required. So I don't have that answer. That's something we need to find out, or we'll figure it out, Krish. But I also don't know. I'm quite excited to know how it's going to turn out the next
Right, and
five,
then
ten
see,
years.
taking that a step further, right? You mentioned you're solving problems for clients, right?
Yeah.
And a client comes to you with a problem, and you find a good solution, and the type of solution you find tends to change based on the client, the project, the
Yeah.
budget, the timelines. the technology, that's available, and a number of other factors. Now, if I were a client 2 years ago, I would have said, "Hey, Alagappan, I have a problem. I have no idea what to do. You're the expert. Tell me."
Yeah.
Fast forward 2 years, I don't have to be in that position because much like Alagappan has ChatGPT, Krish also has ChatGPT, right? So I now can do a lot of due diligence myself as a client. I can come prepared all of the questions that I've otherwise asked somebody and paid them to answer those questions. I can get those answers for free for the most part. Now, I have a question in that context. First of all, do you agree that that is the case? I mean, are you seeing clients being a lot more prepared because they actually can have a lot of the answers before they come present the problem?
I think two things. No, I think like you said, I think I just want to bring it back to the problem statement on prompting. No, so it depends on. No, not everybody cannot get answers the same way. No, if Krish has got a thinking and prompting, the output of Krish is different than Alagappan's output and prompting, because this prompting is nothing but my own experience, my own way of understanding how I do it, and like Chris doing it differently. So your output and my output won't be the same. The chat GPT may be the same, but your output and my output will be different. That's what I want to kind of call it out, or just to clarify. And the second point that you said from a client standpoint, of course, clients are becoming more intelligent with all this newer tools available. Normally asked for, no, from they are not doing asking for a consulting engagement like the way we would have did it for 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 months. That is kind of getting shortened, I would say. So
Yeah, Alagappan, sorry, your audio?
sorry, I think there's some issue on audio. Okay, go on. Yeah.
I can hear you now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, sorry, I was saying, so the customer requirement has changed a lot, but still, not that they can find all their answers. Still, they need consultants to help on it. But the expectations on the timeline has kind of reduced, Krish, in terms of.
Which means if somebody, right, somebody is providing a consulting service, in the world of consulting, things are let's go to product in a second, but I want to just sort of have this as a segue. Earlier, somebody came to you with a problem. They may or may not have thought through a lot of the problem domain themselves. They may not have been equipped. They may not have been technically savvy to doing some of this. And you started, from ground zero, right? But now, with all of this available, they are either genuinely more educated before they come to you, or at least believe that they're more educated when they come to you. So they're expecting to validate some of those questions and approaches with you. That's one change. And two is the way you are approaching. I hope I get you. You can hear me, right,
Yeah,
Alagappan?
I can hear you,
I
Krish.
don't.
Yeah,
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
So they came to you. Now, that's how they come to you with the problem, with some preparation. That's one change. And you said earlier how you approach the problem with the AI first approach. That is also different from how you had done it before. So that's also has changed. So does with these two, a number of other things could have changed, but just these two changes, does that change the fundamental phase of consulting, and how much does it change the consulting business?
I think there is some. Again, I'm again right now. I've not seen any solid proof, but still, the way we do things, consulting will also change, in my opinion, because I think gone are those days where we used to spend 3 months to do assessment, analysis, recommendation. I think that is getting shortened to an extent, but the number of consulting engagements also will less, because people are all going towards more. Can you do a POC earlier on, because they don't expect us to do a long term consulting. I think that is kind of changing, but I don't see a lot of data points for it. But I think that's going to change a lot in terms of the time period that they expect, and what we expect out of the consulting engagement is also changing, Krish.
Okay, so that that's also evolving essentially, right?
Yeah,
The length of
correct.
the project is evolving. And in terms of, let me go to technologies, right? I want to talk about technology and staffing for a second. When we're talking about technologies, like, and not just your organization per se, I'm asking a more generic question about consulting, which is, do you have, like, hey, you know what, we provide, we are an AWS shop, or we are an Azure shop, or we are in a Google Cloud, meaning even though all of these hyperscalers might provide similar solutions, I'm more comfortable as an organization working on this company and their tools, so my solutions would be more oriented towards them. That's, I'm assuming that's typically the case, right?
Yeah, correct. Most of the clients have their kind of they're married towards one particular cloud provider, and then they actually expect that, and we also provide cloud centric solutions. all comparable, Krish.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
go
what,
ahead.
let me take AWS, right? At Snowpal, we use a lot of these providers, but AWS is actually what we do a lot, use a lot of essentially, right? Our APIs are on AWS, and you have all of these the gateways there and everything else. The question is, AWS is beautiful. I love AWS, but the challenge also is there's a huge catalog, right? There's like, when you want to solve a problem, they have like 17 different ways of doing it. And to be honest, not all of their ways are very creative based on what they created. It's my opinion.
Yeah,
AWS sometimes does not help other businesses from what I know, from my experience, from what I've read and what I've seen. So let's say take MongoDB as a database, right?
yeah,
I like MongoDB. AWS has like Document DB, which is different from Mongo, but they have like uh, DynamoDB, which is different but kind of similar in some ways. But they have a number of different options, right? Now, a lot of their options also are competing with each other, and this could be true of any other provider as well.
yeah.
How do you? One of the biggest challenges, at least we face as a small company, right? A lot smaller than you guys are, but still as a software product company, how do we pick which one to go with? And the point is that people are like, you know what, go do a prototype and see if it works and then make a decision. You know what? We move very quickly as a small company because we don't have the luxury of moving any slower, but we don't have the luxury of retreating as well. If I go pick one, DynamoDB, we get it to work in a prototype. We don't have the luxury to try seven other alternatives, even provided by AWS. So, like it or not, we're going to roll that, go forward with that. It's going to go from prototyping to development to test to staging to production to end of time, essentially. So, I mentioned a couple of challenges there. I want to know, like, get your thoughts on how do you go navigate and maneuver this world of AI tools and technologies and figure out which one actually is as good as it claims to be and find out what makes sense in the context of the problem that you're solving.
It's a very interesting question. I think we do have that problem in terms of there is a, in every week there is one tool coming to the market in terms of what's there, but we also kind of go with like you said, no, we have a within our own solutioning groups. We got one solution group for Google, one solution group for AWS, one solution group for Azure. We have that kind of a thing. So we do have to go with it, and then sometimes customer give us what do you call autonomy for us to decide whatever we think is right. Sometimes customer says we are preferring this for so and so reason, but sometimes we have to do a quick assessment in terms of cost and other things, and then we do have a recommendation. Hey, among all these six tools, based on experience working with other clients, we have got this thing already done. So we actually use that and then get a buy-in. What is that we want to prefer, but with the available time we do some justice towards it, but the problem remains pretty same, but we do to an extent this evaluation, Krish, but this is kind of evolving every now and then,
Okay,
Krish.
because the reason I say that, right, I say this as a developer, right?
Yeah,
I want to believe that I'm not like that, but I feel like I have the rights to say it because I'm also a developer. If
yeah,
you come to me and let's say I've been working on, I don't know, building user interfaces using React or and Redux in those 6 months, right? There's a good chance that you come to me wanting a UI solution. You say, Krish, what is the best? Not not in the interest of being dishonest, in the interest of being an engineer or a developer, I'd be like, yeah, like, let's go with React and
yeah.
Redux because that's fresh in my mind. I've done that. It works well. There's no problems with it. I'll go with it. That does not necessarily mean that's the best way to solve the problem, right? It just means that that is how Krish has been solving it lately, and that's what he's comfortable doing, and he's going to shove it down Alagappan's throat and then get that done. And how easy or difficult it is for me to shove it down your throat depends on how much of that work you've done hands-on yourself. I'm more talking about how should we approach the solving of this problem and how best can we do it because we want to get this done by Wednesday, and today is Monday, right? We're not talking like a 3 month time frame. And Alagappan, this is not even during the world advent with the advent of AI.
Yeah,
As you know, if you're a startup, you always never have enough money or time, so you always
correct.
had to scramble to get things done.
Yeah,
So you try
yeah.
to figure out solutions. Now, the reason I give this long-winded introduction, my apologies, and brevity is not my forte, is how do you dissect when somebody tells you in this age of complicated AI engineering, every day you look at it, there's an autonomous AI agent, there's agentic AI, there's different providers of that. Not only these large cloud providers, there's a lot of smaller mid-sized companies providing tools that all seem very cool. And then you start using them after like 3 hours. I'm like, you know what? I never want to see this for the rest of my life because it's horrible. But if you ask me to play the role of a developer and convince somebody that this is the way to go, sometimes it's possible to do it. So I want to know that as somebody who's watching or listening to this, who's not a developer, who's working with developers, who almost always, I say this as a developer, we end up using fancy language. How do you tell if somebody's telling you the truth and whether what they're telling you actually makes sense? Because you may or may not be. My apologies because it's a long question, but the crux of the question is how do it is hard enough for people to tell if a developer is actually speaking the truth and nothing but the truth in the age of non-AI. But in the age of AI, I feel like it's going to become even harder. So I want to know how to approach that if the two of us were to wear a non-engineering hat and answer this question.
Um, so just to kind of rephrase your question, you are saying how do you need to adopt towards this expectation in the current AI world,
No, the problem is
wherein
when I ask a question with 2,000 words, it's not your fault, it's my fault. All that I'm asking is if I go to a developer and ask them, how do I solve the problem using AI, they're going to come up with a few different options, right? They say, you can do it this way or
yeah,
that way. They're going
yeah,
to maybe take AWS, and even within AWS, they might take two different technologies. AWS is a large catalog of AI technologies.
yeah.
Without me understanding the specifics of how those technologies work and me not being hands on, how can I tell the difference between those approaches? Because I feel like that is going to be important as more technologies come into play. Not everybody is going to be an engineer who's going to be leading these projects, and I feel like not everybody needs to be an engineer because AI is able to do a lot of their job. So how do I tell as a non-engineering management person which of these approaches actually makes more sense from a technology standpoint?
Uh, so this is the way I look at it. No, because there may be a number of technologies, but still the outcome may be the same. No, you cannot actually. No, you need to evaluate based on the outcome. It was. I'm thinking, Krish. Maybe hope I'm not a developer from an experience standpoint, but still I'm just trying to think from a as a business user. Hey, what is the outcome? No, the outcome, and then with all the AI. There is a lot of things around AI in terms of bias and other things. So we need to look at from an outcome standpoint and make a decision, because you cannot actually make a decision with respect to the approaches that you have chosen. Is what I'm thinking. Maybe you may have a different perspective from engineering and architecture standpoint, but I'm looking at more from an outcome because for me it may be a black box at the end of the day in
No,
terms
I
of
get it. Right now, it
yeah,
makes
yeah,
what you're saying makes sense. But let me try to be a little more specific. Let's say when they asked Sundar Pichai in one of the last earnings calls, right, the Alphabet CEO, about the capex expenditure. A lot of these hyperscalers are spending so much money on AI that
yeah,
their numbers are not as good as it could otherwise look. One of the things, to paraphrase what he said, one of the things he said was, "Hey, we would run the risk of overspending than underspending on AI technologies," is what he had said at the time.
correct.
Now, fast forward 6 months, you look at the price of Alphabet or Google. uh, Only time has to tell, right? They seem like they have a PE ratio of 17. It seems like a wonderfully good point if you ask me as an a non-professional financial person. I feel like it's a great point, but I'm still worried about it because I don't know if perplexity is going to make Google irrelevant tomorrow. I have no idea. But the reason I mentioned that is a lot of these companies are spending a lot of the money, but
Yeah.
they are companies with a lot of talent, with a ton of money, right? We're talking $1 trillion companies. Even with those companies, investors are asking these questions. Hey, you know what? Are you not overspending on AI? Are you getting the returns you're expecting? Because they're not convinced. The investment community is not, Wall Street is not necessarily convinced that these companies are spending as, they they worry that they're spending a lot more than they should be spending. If that is true of companies like Meta and Alphabet and Microsoft, what about the rest of the companies who don't have all of this expertise, right? Hiring an AI engineer could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the UI in the US, for instance. So my question is, can companies be overspending on some of these tools and technologies and then regret doing that 6 months down the road, or do you not see that as a necessary possibility?
Yeah, I think no. There are two kind of thing. No, the platform company spending, I think it's personally justified because end of the day you have a cash flow. If you look at the cash flow for Meta or Alphabet and all, they are having a much cash reserve. They can able to spend it. So for them, overspending is fine. But for the consumers on the client side who are consuming the technology, I think they cannot overspend. In my opinion, I think they need to be watchful and cautious, and then decide when to use AI, when to spend the money, and they need to be more like a on a few things they should lead it, few things they need to watchful, and then wait and see how the market is going rather than spending for everything. That's what I personally say from an industry that I come normally serve, no, because retail and consumer goods clients is what I normally serve, and they don't are not very cash rich like the technology companies. So I think that is the approach that they are following. I think it makes sense to follow. Is what I'm thinking. There are, in terms of which industry you belong to, you need to overspending is justified or not is what I'm thinking, Krish.
Okay, no, it makes sense, right? And in terms of differentiation, right? Like when see, I come to you as a client, and you're providing me a service. Let's say 2 years ago it cost $100, right? Now you have a certain budget. You spend whatever amount of that money. I'm just taking a random number. You spend $80. You make $20. That's your profit. Now that I came to you with no awareness, no knowledge, and you did all of the work for me. Now 2 years down the road, I've done a lot of preparation. I feel like I'm more educated as a client, so I've done some of the work. I read somewhere that people who are going to lawyers are doing 80% of the work, and they're only getting
Yeah,
20% of the work done by the lawyers. So the revenue stream has completely changed. Now, the $100 spent, I'm looking to spend lesser because I feel like I've already spent time and effort to do $20 of the work. So I'm now coming to you with $80, right? So your budget went from 100 to 80. And now I'm asking you, Alagappan, there's a lot of AI tools and AI agents available. And you mentioned that, as when you're staffing some humans and Homo sapiens and some AI agents. So surely you're doing that to save money. So I'm not thinking don't want to give you $80. I actually want to give you $60, right? Instead of
correct.
$100, now you're getting $60. Now you were able to use the $100 2 years ago in a certain way, right? You spend money on some hardware, some software, some services, some cloud solutions, and whatnot. Now you have to spend money on all of these AI tools and LLM, and they are very, very expensive, right? Very expensive. Like I want to try something out on Amazon AMI using NVIDIA. I had to tell myself with our budget, I can have 10 minutes of the time. So AI better be really good, and I better be really, really good because I can only spend 10 minutes because after that, it's too much for me to spend money on, right? So these tools are very expensive. Now you have $60 in my hypothetical example. You have extra costs because these tools are actually going to cost more money. Now, as an organization that's providing a service, with the advent of AI, are you actually being, I'm talking about a random company. Are they able to make more money, or are they going to make less money because of everything that's happened?
I think no. This is what no. If companies like service providers cannot adopt AI and then get the productivity because customers are already asking for it. The way you were saying, Krish, last 1 year, all the deals that we have done, every client is asking for productivity improvements. The example that you said, they are already asking for productivity improvements already, and we need to bake in, and we need to. We normally commit and then we do it. No, that's why we work upon. No, we cannot do and then commit. We'll just commit and then we'll do it. So similarly, we are already doing it. No, like lot of the large deals that we have made in the last 1 year, at least almost 100% of the deals we have got productivity baked in. Now we are back working in terms of how we can able to still make that productivity commitment to the customer. It's already happening, Krish. We have
Wow.
to make it.
Okay. And then
There's no question. We are in the market or not in the market. That's the only thing that we got to answer
absolutely
there.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And then from a hiring standpoint, right, like a developer, like let's say you needed 3 developers, because this is a question that every developer has asked me, and I'm sure they may have asked you as well, right? We were not, as a developer, we were not worried when AI came after every other job. You know what? Yeah, lawyer, sure, AI can do this. Oh, you're writing content creation, some of it can be done by AI. But development, no, 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 no. We are special, right? And then when it happened, it was sort of a rude awakening, and
Yeah.
everybody goes into this first mode of denial. I've talked to a lot of developers myself, really good ones, who are like, you know what? No way AI could do this or that, or it replaces me, right? And I saw, Zuckerberg had said recently, and even the Anthropic founders, one of them, that in the next 6 to 9 months, I don't know how much, how possible that is for everybody, but that's what I heard in that. In the next 6 to 9 months, a lot of the mid-level engineers could be replaced by AI, right? My immediate question was, what happens? How does someone become a senior engineer then? Because if you replace all the mid-level engineers with AI, nobody can become a senior engineer because there's no progression there, right? It's kind of a weird conundrum, because the idea was the senior engineers can work with AI instead of mid-level engineers. So you replace a lot of the mid-level engineers with AI, but now 2 years down the road, there are no humans doing the mid-level engineering work. So the AI is going to become 2 years older. So it better become a senior engineer because there is no senior engineer to oversee this mid-level engineer. That's an interesting thing. But I want to ask, how have you seen, like, in other words, if a team needed 10 developers, do they need 8 now? Do they need 6 now? Do they need 4 now? Or do they need 2 now?
I don't know the number exactly, but it is coming down. To your point on senior engineer, no, I'm just thinking, no, in the tomorrow's world, we have to rename these titles differently. I'm just coming up with a word as we speak now. No, it become an agent ops manager, a manager who will an engineer who understands technology, and his job is to manage the agents. No, it's more like an agent ops manager. I think you would have heard about ML ops, DevOps, LLM ops, like
Right.
that. There is an agent ops. So maybe the senior engineer title will go away, and then I'm just making it up. Sorry, I'm just saying it.
No,
There'll be another title called it's an agent ops manager. This person's job is to ensure that he manages 10 agents. I'm just making it up all these numbers, but still, his job is to ensure that all the agent ops are doing what they're supposed to do, and that being all the maintenance and support, everything will be done. So the role itself will change a lot. I'm not saying development role will completely go away, but there will be a lot of shift is what I'm thinking, Krish. But I'm not a developer myself, so I'm just kind of saying it based
no,
on
no, that's a
whatever
fair
I'm.
point, right? So, which
Yeah,
means I agree. But, let's take that. So, the roles are changing, the nature of jobs is changing, the whole approach to building software is changing. And we're talking about software as an industry, and I reckon that this is no different in other industries as well, right?
yeah, yeah,
But we are closer to it, luckily, because we are helping build some of it, which is
yeah,
amazing, right? That's why
yeah.
software engineering is awesome. Now, if you take that as high school or colleges, do you see that the way, I let me step back. When I graduated, we graduated from what we learned before the call, just about the same time. I enjoyed my time in college, but in hindsight, I think I spent personally a lot of time in for studying formal education. A lot of us were in school for 13 years or so till 12th grade, right? Let's say even 12 years. We did undergrad. In my case, it was 5 years, so it was 17. And I studied for another 2 years, 19 years, right? 19 years. Now I have to be a scholar, right? I have to be an academician if I'm studying for 19 years. And one would believe after 19 years of spending time and doing like 400 credits in college, I would be ready to take on the world. I went to my first job on day one. I had to write, I don't know, create a synonym for Oracle. I remember that vividly because my DBA, her name was Gina, amazingly brilliant woman who helped me. She said, Krish, can you open this file? And there were like 20 create synonyms, right?
Oh, okay.
All I had to do was create a 21st synonym. So I had to do YYDD, like copy paste in VI, change the name of the synonym and what it acted on essentially, right? So 2 word changes is. But the beauty of being a junior engineer, somebody actually gives you credit, even though you didn't really do anything, provide any value.
Yeah.
I went to the meeting the next day and I was like, you know what? They acknowledged my accomplishment. They were genuinely thankful. They introduced me to the larger team and I felt like I built a rocket, right? I felt like I was sending something to space. But that's the
Hmm.
beauty of the team and the people that guide you, right? Humans, right? Not machines, but humans. The reason I mentioned that is after 19 years of studying, I was not anywhere near prepared to executing that first task. Now you could be like, Krish, you're an oddball person. You're the only one I've heard of. But before I ask my question, Alagappan, you don't have to agree. Do you agree that this is true, or do you think I was just unique that I was unprepared, or do you think education has generally not prepared people to face the world?
Yeah, I always felt like that, even in my own personal opinion. Um, Again, it would have given me some social skills in the college, but whatever I've learned on my college, I think the social skills, what I even know, I kind of use, like collaborating, networking with people, but may not be whatever I read in those subjects. I'm not able to use it, Krish. But still, to your point, at least I don't know about the latest development in education, but whatever education that we all had, I'm not saying that those things has helped us. It's more about how do we handle the situation rather than exactly those subjects has not helped me personally, Krish, in my professional world. Yeah.
My diploma has helped my parents a lot more than me, to be honest with you, because it was nice for them to go and tell the neighbor that, hey, my son's actually
Absolutely.
graduated, blah blah blah, right? But
Yeah.
not as much. I tell my mom it's helped you a whole lot more than it's actually helped me, to be honest.
Correct.
The
Correct.
reason I
Correct.
say that is I could be wrong, but I'm not seeing the pace at which these schools and colleges teach change to keep in touch with what's happening in the real world. And that's not unique to today's scenario. That's been happening over the years, but it becomes more profound in my opinion now because my son recently graduated, and when we work together, and I recognize that a lot of things that comes only by doing it repetitively, right? You got to do it
Correct.
like 100 times, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you're doing, and like you make a sandwich. I go eat at Potbelly. It's a sandwich, but everybody makes it differently, right? I
Yeah.
like it when a certain sandwich maker creates it, and when they do it repeatedly, they have a sense of where should the tomato go, where should the pickle go, and which order does it go. I'm not convinced that the schools are preparing students, and if you agree if that is actually the case, for somebody watching this or listening to this who's actually Gen Z, what should they do to prepare themselves for what's out there, right? In other words, if you did things the same way that we did 20 years ago, I'm not sure that people are going to stay employed. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm quite certain that they're not going to stay employed. So when you think about the next generation, right, do you fear for their future in terms of jobs, or are you excited because they can do cooler things? What is your perspective? And last but not least, do you think the colleges and schools are doing what they should be doing to prepare them?
Yeah, the first question of fear and excitement, I think it's a kind of a combination. I would say it's a hybrid right now. I kind of fear for sometimes because you're taking my kid as an example, no, like I have a daughter who finished her graduation last year, and then my son is in 10th grade. So I am fearful for this reason because when I compare to our generation or this generation, uh, I don't want to sound that I'm old, but still the softer skills and the networking and social skills are a little bit lesser, I feel.
You said
That
little
is where
bit.
I
No, you said
lesser,
little bit.
lesser,
You're being very
lesser.
gracious.
Yeah, yeah, lesser for that matter, not little bit lesser, lesser for that matter. And then there again, the other skills may be better than us, but still, from that is what my fearful for. To your question on what they should focus on, they shouldn't focus more on the grades and maybe the colleges where they need to go to. They need to focus more about the softer skills and then some of the other aspects which the colleges don't teach, no, like in terms of creatively doing something and then working with people and then create something. This team working, networking, all these things are more important than getting your GPAs is what my I won't say advice, but my guidance, I would say, Krish,
No,
on that
I
aspect of.
couldn't agree more with that statement. Even if I wanted to, I'll tell you why. In my second semester back in college, my GPA was 4.7, right? 4.7 out of 10, not
Yeah.
5. It was out of
Oh,
10.
okay. I was
So
about to
when I
ask that
went
question.
when I went back home, my father, I told my dad, he's like, "What? How did you do?" I said 4.7. Before I could explain it, he presumed it was out of 5, right? Who am I to correct it? I was like, yep, you know what? That sounds about right. It was out of 5, right? So that's literally, I'm not even making this up. So, uh, this is amazing, right? It's easy to ask questions than to have answers. The good thing about hosting a podcast is I only have to ask questions. I don't need to have any answers, right? I have the luxury of having no clue about any of this, but that was not my intent in any case, right? As we come to the kind of the tail end of the podcast here, I have a couple of non quote unquote technical questions that I typically ask of my guests. But before I do that, two things. One is thank you very much, Alagappan, for taking the time to have this chat. I had a wonderful time, right? A wonderful time, right? It's just every conversation is different. Everybody is unique. Their perspective is different. I've never had the pleasure of talking to somebody who's running, a large consulting organization. So there's plenty of learnings, for me along the way with what you've shared. So wholehearted thank you for you to take the time to have this chat here. Now, before I go to my non-technical-ish questions, do you have any questions for me? Now's the time. You can ask me anything for everything I've asked you over the last 1 hour.
No, no, no. Thanks for having me here, Krish. It was a good experience. I was not expecting what to expect in this call, but it was a good conversation, and
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed talking and sharing whatever I know. And obviously, as you said, there's a lot of learning. I also learned in this conversation a lot from you, Krish. And not a question, but I don't know. Again, what is your perspective on the future of development or coding or a software development, is Krish, from your perspective? Basically,
My
the same
future,
question, whatever you asked. Yeah.
I know. I'm hoping my dad will give me enough money so I don't have to do any of this, which is not in the coming. Which is not. I'm not complaining, but that's a different story. So let me get to the more serious answer. I'll tell you, I separate this. It's going to be a slightly longer answer because, as you've seen, brevity is not my forte. So, my apologies again. I see this as three segments, right? The way I see it. The first segment is the folks who have done this for 40 years, right? 4 or 5 decades, who are nearing retirement, who have the luxury of retiring even after 5 decades because the way the world's going, maybe some of us don't even have the luxury of retiring. They have a choice, right? They're like, you know what, this is all cool and exciting, but I might actually sit this one out because I'm very close to retirement or almost retired. I might make myself aware of what's happening because I'm curious. I've built this, been in the business for 50 years, but it doesn't honestly affect me, right? That's one segment, right? The second segment, as I see, is Gen Z, folks who are entering the workforce, the future of the world, essentially, so to speak. They are learning things the new way. They're not learning things how we learned it. They're learning things completely the new way. And they have to, we'll come to I'll come to the example in a second, but that's one category of people. But I'm neither the first one. Regardless of what my hash says, I'm still not there yet. I'm not Gen Z, surely. I'm smack in the middle, much like yourself. And it's a very interesting place to be because we have to unlearn and relearn. I cannot do things the way I've done in the past because it actually bothers me. Every time we go to build something, like we're writing a new API right now as we speak. If I write the code or if we write the code, approach the problem the same way we did it 2 months ago or 6 months ago, I I feel like that is wrong already. Not for any other reason, but because things are changing, but we have not changed, right? So we have to unlearn the way we've done things and relearn. Now the thing is, if you are at the tail end of this, you're retiring, you can sit this one out. If you're Gen Z, you have the luxury of learning it the way you're supposed to learn it today. We, I think, are the most challenged in this situation, in my opinion, because we've done it a certain way the last 20 years, and we have muscle memory. I open an IDE, I write code a certain way, and now I'm like, you know what, Krish, don't do it. Wait for ChatGPT to tell you. And oh boy, the other day I put 2 slashes, not for the code, for the comment. I was writing some Golang code, and I have to share this with you. I've shared it with the audience before, I think, but I'll share it with you personally here. I was like, you know what? Coding is all right. I want to see if it can generate a meaningful comment. So I wrote 6 lines of code, and I'm not the kind of developer. We are not the kind of developers who are like, hey, there could be a method called get restaurants, and we're not going to add a comment that says this fetches restaurants. That'd be stupid, right? We don't do that. We only add comments where it actually adds meaningful value.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I put 2 slashes, and I wanted to say something about that piece of code, right? Something. I had not constructed that sentence in my mind. I was taking the 1 second to construct it. I put 2 slashes, and it completed the comment to the T. Exactly the way I wanted to write that. And it was not restating what the code actually did. It was phenomenal. I actually stood up. I was like, oh my God. For everybody who questions some of the things this thing can do, here is an example, right? So it was stunning. I share that example because we have to unlearn and relearn, which is very exciting which is a good thing to do, right? Otherwise life can get boring, right? I mean, who wants this? I mean, it's nice to have a standard paycheck and stuff, which I've not had in a long time, but it's still nice to be excited about learning something new as well, right? So sorry, the way the way I see this is, if you're building software and you genuinely enjoy building software, you're going to have to take a step back and ask and say, you know what? I know I've done it a certain way. Things have been going all right, but just because I did it a certain way in the past does not mean I should do it the same way in the future. At the same time, before I jump and go knee deep into some of these technologies, I should have a pretty decent understanding, at least at the high level, of what value these provide, right? And how they are different from each other. Because a lot of times my concern is people start using something because it's cool. That's a developer thing. Oh, you know what? This is new. Why don't I use it? And you know what? We are guilty of that because as a small company, we have 7 different programming languages. And now you would ask, if Krish were not an engineer and I ran this company, would I have 7 different programming languages? I don't think so, right? Therein lies the problem, right? We are all, we have our own weaknesses and we fall into that trap. So I think here is my 2 cents. I don't belong to the school of thought that AI is a hype. I think if these companies are spending tons of billions of dollars, if Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella and Tim Cook and Jensen Huang and Zuckerberg, if they are telling me something, you know what, they could be wrong. But I don't have the audacity to think that I am more right than them, right? That's as simple as that. So I
Yeah.
want to err on the side of safety or loyalty, if you will, having not even worked for any of them. Uh, for most of them, I should say. I think we are in here for the long haul, right? So either you buck up, come to terms with reality, and learn things you have to learn. With a caveat, right? Coming from India, you probably can relate to this. A lot of times you're not given a choice.
Yeah.
You know what? You have to become an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, and sometimes you're not good at any of those things. You still become one and you can still make a living. That's a different
Hmm?
problem altogether. But your heart doesn't beat for that. If your heart does not beat for, what do I say, data, if your
Hmm?
heart does not beat for agentic AI, and you get stuck doing that and getting paid $300,000, I'm not sure you're going to be a happy camper. So you got to be very careful. I tell people, make sure you like what you do, because you don't like what you do, you're living a, I don't know, it's my personal opinion. I couldn't do that, right? I mean, I could have done a few other things in my life, but I picked the hardest thing to do, which is to run a company, right? And is it hard or what? Every morning I wake up, I'd be like, I could be doing so many other things that seem a little bit easier, but your heart does not beat for that, right? So the my only advice, if anyone even asks for it, is do what you enjoy doing. And if you're good at doing that, and at least if you're living, I'm not saying America is the best place in the world, but I love the US. You know, we all love the US, you know, that's why we all migrated here. So there's no dearth of opportunities. So pick what you enjoy doing and be pretty darn good at doing that. So nobody can say, no, I can't hire you because you're really, really good at doing that, right? But that only comes when you actually enjoy doing it,
Correct.
not if you start clocking time and you're getting out at like 5. You know, you can't do any of that stuff, right? I know it's a long answer, but at least that's the way I see it. And
Yeah.
my only hope for myself is that every day I wake up, I don't lose any excitement in wanting to build the next thing, right? Because if you lose that excitement,
Yeah.
you're screwed. You're screwed. There's no helping anybody.
Yeah. You need to, the passion is the one which drives us a lot, and that we cannot leave it for any reason. Yeah.
It's not worth it, right? At least we are blessed to be able to pursue it. I mean, you could be born in a different part of the world and doing a different thing. Like, you know, I'll share one last story as an anecdote, right? I was in India. The last time I was in India, the guy who drove me to the airport was a really nice guy, right? He was almost my age at the time. And I'm like, I had a chat with him. I am very chatty, as you can tell. I'm not a man of few words. So when I was talking to him, I figured he could have, you know, from an ability standpoint, we were no different. It was exactly the same. If he had gone to college or school the way I had done, because, you know, my parents were able to put me in those places, he would have, you know, had a, you know, living a slightly different life, right? So the only separation was the opportunities that are available to us. So anybody who comes and tells me like, hey, I'm the smartest or the bestest of the best, I'm like, you know what, so sure, maybe you're blessed with certain things, so you could take that forward, and not everybody comes with that blessing. So for people who are blessed, and a lot of us are, even if we don't recognize that on a daily basis, we have the choice to make those decisions, right? Hey, I don't
Yeah.
want this and I want that. But there are parts of the world where people are like, you don't have the choice, right? You just
Yeah.
got one thing in front of you and you can do it. So if you have the privilege to learn AI and do it, the only reason you should not do it is if you don't enjoy doing it, right?
Correct. Correct.
Otherwise, there's no good reason not to do it. I know your question was specific. My answer is more like a developer's answer in an interview, where it's maybe neither wrong nor right, and you're trying to figure out, should I hire this guy or
Yeah.
should I not hire this guy?
Yeah, but that's what I think. My just to add one cent to it. No, like I think all of us have to take a look at it. What is the role AI is playing? Whether you want to build AI products or not is different, but at least you need to use that as a way to say how AI can able to help augment my work. Is something that all of us has to start looking at it. I think that's what we have to take. Again, not that just want to forcefully adopt something, but you have to start seeing, hey, it's another toolkit available. How can I make use of it? That's what we have to look at it. Everybody in their role is what I'm thinking. Other than we are building with AI or not, but at least we should use AI in our own productivity and efficiency purpose. Actually, it gives a lot of benefits for sure, Krish. That's personally my experience is actually
Okay, and
use it as a productivity tool. Yeah.
my last question before I go to the non-technical ones is, What is one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's Gen Z and who's watching or listening to this podcast?
Yeah. So uh, I don't want them to think ChatGPT from a or any other Gen AI tool from standpoint that look at it how this can able to help your creativity, how you can able to help improvise, how you can able to do your own thing. No, so adopt this tool and technology. Like when you're spending time on social media, you can also spend time on this AI tool more from whatever you're using. No, whatever you're gaming, whatever you're interested on, try to use adopt AI in your personal life so that you the opportunities you can able to unlock is what I'm thinking, Krish. That's what I would say for them. Yeah, they cannot look at this. Hey, I don't want to do computer science. Doesn't matter. AI, everybody has to use it. Technology, everybody has to use it. Whatever you choose to use it, but still start adopting is what I would say, Krish.
Great advice, right? Any other questions you have for me before I
I'm good.
ask
I'm
you?
good. I'm good, Krish.
Okay, my two is simple, which is non-technical. Is what is your favorite food? Like, if somebody woke you up and you're like, "Hey, I want to eat this," and it's like a comfort food. And if it's not something people might understand, you might have to explain it. What is your favorite food?
I'm a dosa person. Dosa plus vadai. I don't know whether people listen to it, but I know vadai is basically a South Indian dish that both of them I like a lot.
That's all I have. This is amazing, right? I know I
Good.
went over. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Krish. I really enjoyed it because I was not prepared. Like I said, I was not preparing what to expect, but still, it's a good conversation to have. It's a very interesting topic, and I hope people who are listening will also start adopting AI in their own ways, and then get the benefit out of it. Is what I'm
Oh
expecting.
no,
Yeah.
perfectly, right? The only thing I wish is I spoke lesser. My wife always reminds me, Krish, talk lesser because you want to hear the guest, not you. But I'm always guilty of hogging some of this time as well. Uh, but this is awesome. Alagappan, just make sure you stay on the call after I hit
Yeah.
stop, just so it uploads.
Yeah.
Folks,
Sure. Not a problem.
that's it for today's podcast. We talked at some length, I should say, about AI and its impact, what's happening today, and what we think might be happening, sort of trying to speculate and see the crystal ball. We spoke to Alagappan Veerappan, who's a consulting director at Cognizant. One more time, Alagappan is a consulting director and manages AI and analytics practices for retail and consumer goods clients. I will include the link to Alagappan's LinkedIn profile and any other links you want for us to include. We are happy to include that, Alagappan. With that, folks, just call it wraps on this podcast. Until next time, thank you.